Freeza, one of the most iconic villains in not just anime, but probably in fiction. A character who has transcended his own series to where you don't even have to watch Dragon Ball to know who this character is. Known for his unique design, his cruelty, and his tyranny, and was also responsible for the triggering of the Super Saiyan transformation, which was a huge milestone in the series that is still talked about to this very day. No other villain in Dragon Ball has made as much comebacks as Freeza has, and is due to his massive impact on the series and his overwhelming popularity. When you think of villains in anime that are just pure evil who don't necessarily have a sympathetic backstory or a relatable philosophy, Freeza is one of those villains who comes to mind. I know that many people may prefer villains that have some depth to them or that they can feel sympathy for, but I think villains that are just pure evil from the jump are just as great when it comes to writing villains. But what makes Freeza so beloved by fans? Why is he considered to be Dragon Ball's greatest villain, who always finds ways to come back to the series even in the modern era of Dragon Ball? This video is going to be a deep dive analysis into the character of Freeza. So first off, I want to go over Freeza's personality, and I think the way it was portrayed was very interesting and adds layers to his character. Freeza on the surface is shown to be elegant, polite, and acts like a gentleman. He doesn't speak rudely towards other people, and actually gives respect to people where it is due. This is unlike previous villains in the series, and even the villains that came after him, where they showed their cruelty on the surface. But with Freeza, underneath the polite and gentle mannerisms, there was a very cruel and sadistic nature deep down. There was once an interview by Toriyama where he said that he wanted Freeza to speak in a more polite manner rather than just speaking rudely to show a contrast in Freeza's personality. And this contrast is supposed to make Freeza more menacing and make you feel unsettling when you see him threaten to kill his opponents in a calm and polite manner. And this was shown when he was first introduced to the series, on planet Namek. When he was asking for the location of the Dragon Balls, Freeza was talking like he was some business manager making business requests, which is fitting because Freeza's organization operates by selling planets to other bidders in order to make a profit. And the way he tried to negotiate with the village elder on receiving the Dragon Ball by smiling the whole time and threatening to kill children so casually if he doesn't get what he wants, it creates a sense of discomfort for the reader and lets you know that Freeza is just putting on a facade to hide his true self. We see more of Freeza's politeness from the way he addressed his underlings like Zarbon and Dodoria as Zarbon-san and Dodoria-san as a sign of respect in the Japanese language. Even when Gohan and Krillin attacked Dodoria and left with the Dragon Ball, Freeza still addressed Dodoria in a respectful manner instead of threatening to kill him. Same with how he addressed Zarbon after failing to capture Vegeta, and Freeza still managed to keep his emotions intact. Or from the time when he thanks Captain Ginyu for retrieving the Dragon Balls. These are examples of Freeza's politeness to his underlings despite them being so much weaker than him. And Freeza does this as a way to show authority over them. He knows he is so much stronger than them, and so he does not need to boast his strength or try and convince others that he is the strongest, because Freeza already knows that everyone sees him as the strongest. It explains why he is the only one in the Freeza Force that would fly around in a hoverpod. Is to show his authority because walking beside his underlings is beneath him. That sense of quiet confidence is what makes him so intimidating. And in the Japanese version of the manga and the anime, it is more evident with his speech patterns when he speaks politely. In his first form, Freeza would speak in what is called tenego, which is a polite form of Japanese speech. So Freeza would say words like watashi, which is a polite way of saying I in Japanese. Or he would finish his sentences using the word desu, showing more of his politeness. This contrasts with Frieza's tyrannical nature and is something you will not expect from an evil villain such as Freeza. But this is something that you will only find in the original Japanese version because it kinda gets lost in translation in the English dub. But what's interesting is that as he starts to get angry and gets emotional, and that is where he drops a polite tone and begins to show his true colours. This was pointed out by Vegeta after Freeza swore to kill everyone after the Namekian Dragon Balls were turned to stone. Although his first form speaks politely, through his next few transformations is where we really see the extra layers to his character. When Freeza revealed that he had 3 other transformations, it made Freeza even more of a threat than he already was. An interesting thing to point out when it comes to Toriyama designing his villains is that when he reveals a major villain, they typically don't look as menacing as they should be. For example, when Vegeta and Nappa arrived on Earth, Nappa looked like he was the stronger fighter because of his height and his larger muscles, but Vegeta was actually the strongest Saiyan. The leader of the Red Ribbon Army, the most evil organization on Earth, was Commander Red, and he was a short man who could not fight, yet he had authority over everyone. Majin Buu was revealed as a massive threat by the Supreme Kai, but when he appeared, he had a comedic and goofy design. and Kid Buu was the final antagonist of the Buu saga, despite him looking less menacing than Super Buu. And the same goes for Perfect Cell, looking less menacing than his previous forms. This design philosophy was well executed with Freeza. Freeza's first form did not look as menacing or as threatening as the other antagonists in the Namek Saga, but it was clear that he was way stronger than everyone. But then when he transforms into his second form, he grows a lot in size and becomes more threatening for the Z fighters. His third form adds on to the fear factor and starts to look more creepy and more alien-like. You would expect his final form to look even worse, but the opposite actually happens. His final form, which is just Frieza's actual true form, is a more sleek and simple design. But despite all of that, it's clear that he has way more power than his previous forms. This subversion of expectations is what makes Freeza such an intimidating villain. Even his colour scheme changes to a predominantly white colour when he comes into his final form. The colour white is normally associated with purity and gentleness, but Toriyama actually flipped it to make Frieza's final form more associated with death, cruelty and tyranny. And Frieza still keeps his purple colours from his previous forms, and the colour purple is normally associated with elegance and even royalty. Frieza is the emperor of the universe. He views himself as above everyone and everything, so the purple colours are very fitting, even in his final form. And in each of his 3 transformations, Frieza speaks in different speech patterns, which you can only catch on in the Japanese version. In his second form, Frieza speaks in a more confident and masculine tone. He no longer talks in the usual Tenego speech pattern from his first form. Instead of saying watashi, he starts to use the word ore, which is a more rough and informal way of saying I in Japanese. And this fits his character's design, where he gets really big and starts to become more sadistic in the way that he fights. Then in his third form, when he starts to take on a more creepy and more grotesque design, in his speech pattern, he goes back to using his polite Tenego speech pattern, but the way he speaks is in a more menacing and creepy manner. Then in his final form, he changes his speech pattern yet again and starts to speak like a well-mannered child aristocrat. Instead of using watashi or ore, he now uses the word boku to refer to himself, and that word is mainly used by young boys in a gentle tone. This childlike and gentle tone that Frieza uses against his opponent is meant to show how Frieza sees everyone as beneath him, so he speaks to them in a condescending manner instead of just speaking rudely. Frieza talking like a spoiled, aristocratic child is fitting for his character, because Frieza was born a prodigy with his own father giving him an entire empire to rule over as the next emperor of the universe. And this is in his final form, where you would expect him to speak more aggressively than his previous forms, but instead it's the opposite. This is another example of Toriyama intending Frieza to have an unsettling contrast with his true self, which is a cruel and tyrannical leader who will show absolutely no mercy to anyone who wrongs him. Another interesting aspect about Frieza is how he was written to be the very opposite of Goku. He serves as a foil character to Goku, in that he goes against everything Goku stands for. Goku is pure of heart, whereas Frieza is pure evil. And when you look at how most major villains in Dragon Ball turned good after Goku's influence, even after being brought back several times in the series, Frieza still remains as evil as ever. It's this dynamic between the two of them that makes Frieza so memorable as a villain. Goku's main character trait is his hardworking attitude, which is a huge part of his self-improvement. He wasn't born with natural talent because he was a low-class Saiyan, but through the teachings and the discipline he has developed from his several teachers, from Roshi all the way to King Kai, Goku has constantly improved and pushed past his limits. He knows that no matter how strong he gets, there will always be someone out there who is stronger than him, so Goku will always need to keep improving as a martial artist with that sense of humility in mind. But with Frieza, it's the opposite. Frieza was born with pure natural talent. It was stated by Toriyama that within Frieza's race, Frieza and his father King Cold are actually hybrid mutants, which explains why they are so strong. Frieza has had a huge superiority complex ever since he was young. He was raised to become the Emperor of the Universe, succeeding his father King Cold, and became the leader of the Frieza Force, owning hundreds of planets in the galaxy. He never needed to work hard or do anything to reach that position. He was just naturally gifted, so he was already above everyone in terms of battle power. This is why he never trained a day in his life, because if he is already above everyone, why does he need to improve? That philosophy is in direct contrast to Goku's fighting philosophy, in that no matter how strong he gets, there will always be someone stronger. With all of Frieza's extraordinary talent, his arrogance is what leads to his downfall. Because of his huge ego and arrogance, he was also insecure about his own strength. After becoming the leader of the Frieza Force and dominating planet Vegeta, Frieza hears about the legends about the legendary Super Saiyan. Freeza didn't know whether the legend was actually true or not, but Freeza still feared it nonetheless. He also noticed that the Saiyans had so much potential to grow even stronger, and may one day overthrow him in power. These are the factors that scared Freeza deep down, because he refuses to accept the fact that there are beings out there that could contest him in power. Since he was born a mutant like his father, he was blessed with raw natural talent and was always above everyone. And that is how he lived his life for so long. Being the strongest is all that Freeza has ever known. That is why the very thought of a Saiyan legend coming true terrifies him, because his whole worldview and livelihood will be challenged. He went as far as to wipe out the entire planet Vegeta, including innocent Saiyans who were not going out conquering planets, just so that the legend about the Super Saiyan could never be fulfilled. Instead of trading or trying to improve himself, Freeza took the easy way and just wiped out the Saiyans to maintain his position as the Emperor of the universe. And this comes back to haunt him. Because Freeza destroyed planet Vegeta, it led to Goku being sent away to the planet Earth from his father, and this causes Goku to be raised on Earth by his grandpa Gohan. He grows up to become a disciplined martial artist, and he finally comes face to face with Freeza. And during their fight, Freeza kills Goku's closest friend in front of him in anger, which led to Goku transforming into the Super Saiyan. And that is the dramatic irony of Freeza. His own paranoia and insecurity caused him to destroy the Saiyans because of a legend that may or may not have been true. But because of this, Freeza unknowingly saved the Saiyan child who would one day become the very Super Saiyan he feared. And Super Saiyan was the result of Goku treading hard, surpassing his limits, and triggered by the rage over the loss of his closest friend. Everything that the Super Saiyan form represents is in direct contrast to Frieza's whole worldview, and we see how this comes together in the climax of their fight, where we see Freeza fight at full power for the first time. But even after fighting at full power, Freeza could not maintain the form for very long. Maybe if Freeza had actually trained, he probably would have beaten Goku. And another irony in Frieza's character is that he would always look down on the Saiyans and calling them primitive monkeys driven by rage and emotion. Freeza did not like their prideful nature or their potential in becoming incredibly strong. But those are all the same traits that Freeza has that he was looking down on the Saiyans for having. Freeza was also prideful in his power and his dominance. He had extraordinary potential. He killed Krillin out of rage, and he tried to kill Goku even after helping him because his pride was damaged. So Freeza, beneath his polite persona as a refined emperor, was no different to the very Saiyans he deemed to be inferior to him. On top of all of this, what separates Freeza from other villains in Dragon Ball is how he broke Goku's innocence. Before Goku met Freeza, Goku would always give villains another chance by sparing their lives. He spares Piccolo's life after defeating him, and also spares Vegeta's life at the end of the Saiyan Saga. Even against villains like Nappa and the Ginyu Force, Goku would still advise them to leave the planet, because Goku would prefer it if he didn't kill them. But up against Freeza, Goku spares him by quitting the fight after realizing that his ki was dropping. And the second time was where he gave him energy after begging for his life. Even though Goku hated him for killing his best friend, Goku still gave him another chance, but Freeza still took it for granted and still tried to kill him. This forces Goku to try and kill him and makes Goku realize that there are people out there that just cannot be reasoned with. The fact that Freeza was able to challenge the beliefs of Goku, the main character, is what makes him such a great villain for Dragon Ball. And even when Goku turned into a Super Saiyan, notice that his speech bubbles changed from a round circular shape to a more angular and jagged shape, the same shape that Toriyama uses for the villains when they speak. So Goku's mindset was changing, and even his speech pattern starts to change as a result, from his usual friendly rural dialect to a more aggressive and masculine tone. Again, this is something that you'll only catch in the Japanese version, just like with Frieza's speech pattern. So with Frieza's complex personality and compelling designs, his massive impact on not just the entire story but the character of Goku, it's no surprise why Freeza is considered to be Dragon Ball's greatest villain. And even going into the modern era, no other villain has made as much reappearances as much as Freeza has. Because of his massive popularity amongst the fandom, the writers always find ways to bring him back, even though he has died more than once. And even looking at his role as a villain in Dragon Ball Super, I think he is still just as compelling and as menacing as he was before. Many people think that bringing Freeza back in Dragon Ball Super was for nostalgia purposes, which is true to an extent, but I think what they are also doing with his character in Dragon Ball Super is very substantial. During the Resurrection F arc, after being brought back to life, Freeza takes a different approach to how he wanted to deal with Goku and his friends. For the first time ever, Freeza actually decides to train and because of his extraordinary potential, in just 4 months of training, he was able to reach the level of the gods. But once he gained his new form, he didn't bother to actually master the new transformation because of his impatience. It was the same impatience that led to his death by Trunks after becoming Mega Freeza. Instead of strategizing or training, he immediately set a course for Earth in revenge. So although Freeza took some qualities of Goku like his hard work, Freeza was still too overly confident in his new form, in that he thought that his golden form was enough to win, but it still cost him his life. But from the Tournament of Power is where Freeza starts to make a huge change. As I pointed out before, Freeza during Z was incredibly arrogant, with no sense of humility whatsoever. He used to think that he was above everyone, but after being bested multiple times by Goku, he starts to gain some humility. During the Tournament of Power, Freeza didn't just enter and boast his strength to all of the fighters, because he knows that there are fighters stronger than him, so instead he would strategize. He was acting more patient and would find the best opportunity to eliminate his opponents. Freeza even went as far as to work together with Goku if it meant that they were going to take down Jiren. Freeza has started to become more humble, but that doesn't mean he will reform his ways. He still wants to become the strongest and rule over everything, including Zeno himself. But Freeza is now just being smarter about his approach. Then Black Frieza is the result of Freeza developing into a smarter and more threatening villain. He trained for 10 years in a place similar to the hyperbolic time chamber, and Freeza seems to have mastered his form as well. He was able to one-shot Ultra Instinct Goku and Ultra Ego Vegeta with ease. So Freeza is learning from his past mistakes that he made since the Namek Saga, and Black Frieza is the result of this. Freeza, who was once reliant on his natural talent and felt he never needed to train, has now become someone who has learned from his worst enemy about the importance of hard work, humility, and patience. And currently in the Dragon Ball Super manga, there is no hero who can stand against Freeza, making him even more threatening than he was back in Z. And that is the character of Freeza. A ruthless emperor serving as a perfect contrast to Goku, with a multi-layered personality and design, a major superiority complex, but deep down an insecure, egotistical tyrant terrified at the thought of being surpassed. He has made a major impact on the entire Dragon Ball story and even Goku and Vegeta's characters. Then in the modern era, we see him become a smarter villain, absorbing qualities from his greatest enemies in order to become the most dangerous enemy in the modern era of Dragon Ball. Freeza has proven time and time again why he is considered to be one of the most iconic and greatest villains in shonen history. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you would like to see more of my anime content, please subscribe for more, as I am aiming for 1000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.